all last night, deep into the night, some political nerds with nothing better to do were waiting to see, are they gonna have a vote on the infrastructure bill? Pelosi had spent most of the day saying it's gonna happen. Josh Gottheimer is like, it's definitely gonna happen. And in the end, it did not happen. House Democrats delayed a planned vote yesterday on a major infrastructure package, heading home for the night after inter-party fighting hamstrung their ability to pass the legislation. That particular cover of it, like, who's to say who's responsible for this? Maybe there was a deal, maybe there wasn't a deal. But anyway, leaving the Capitol just after midnight, Ms. Pelosi told reporters, quote, "We're not trillions of dollars apart," although some would have you believe that is very much what is happening. And she vowed there will be a vote today. Well, coincidentally, today is today. And so maybe there will be a vote. Jen Psaki in the White House said a great deal of progress has been made this week and we are closer to an agreement than ever, but we are not there yet. And so we will need some additional time to finish the work starting tomorrow morning, first thing. Now, as I said in sort of the lead into this, there's a lot of like, is it gonna happen? Oh God, maybe there is. But the thing is, like the side that basically caused this to not happen, they didn't vote against it because they didn't have to. No vote was ever called, but the Congressional Progressive Caucus said and has been saying, we're not gonna do it. Now that does not mean they were definitely gonna stick to their guns, okay? Politicians often don't. They often lie or don't have the strength to actually do it. And we on the left aren't used to people who represent us actually following through with what they say they're gonna do. But in this case, they did. And their leader in the House, Pramila Jayapal, said, nobody should be surprised that we are where we are because we've been telling you that for 3.5 months. And they actually meant it, at least so far. And we've moved past a much more substantive hurdle than a lot of the rhetorical stuff over the past few months. So Brett, what's your take on what happened yesterday and going into today?
Some of the more hilarious and amazing things that happened at the end of the day last night were there were Susan Rice and White House aides were having these late night negotiations with Schumer to try to push Manchin in the right direction and maybe wrangle some folks. That is really the first time. Yesterday was the first time in this very obvious timeline that I saw at least some pressure being pushed on it, but Bernie Sanders was outside Schumer's office saying, this is stupid. You can't have these late night negotiations. We're definitely killing this thing. So it got into the wee hours of the night as people that represent progressive interests, which by the way, it bears repeating, these interests aren't just niche progressive faves. These are faves by most of the country. Across the nation, this has a plus 40 favorability rating. And more than that, it's the Biden agenda. And so a lot of this stuff has been on the wall for the walls of DC's Capitol building for months and months. But what's so strange to me is watching these, I have now an antenna that I plug into my TV. So I get ABC, NBC, CBS. And the national news coverage of this is pretending all of this is new developments that happened last night. Instead of what you're saying, where we've been saying this for months and months. And why are they shocked? The only person who's changed really over all this time is Manchin, and his numbers aren't going up. They're actually going down, down, down. As you've been saying for months and months, and it's crazy that a Newsweek tweet went off on this yesterday. It went viral. The Newsweek was by the way, 4 months ago, or a few months ago, Manchin wanted a $4 trillion spending package.
And everyone was
and I was John and TYT have been putting this on graphics for weeks and weeks and weeks now. It's so weird that you guys are finally coming around to the reality that Manchin is being super sus about this. He might be the imposter.
Yeah, that's true. And we're gonna have a little bit more from him. I just want to quickly acknowledge what was done was they did sort of boot the whole debt ceiling thing back to early December. So the government will be funded. It was gonna shut down at midnight. And I think at least part of the coverage last night. Sorry,
those are two separate things. So originally the Senate, the debt ceiling is still here. Like that's still an October
solve
thing.
The problem. They just did
still
that's
like an October 18th thing. They continued the funding of the government, so it won't shut down through December.
Yes, thank you. In any event, Manchin, who reporters are continuing to try to get some information out of, and we're gonna get a couple different sources of information on him, told reporters yesterday that his top line had been 1.5 trillion, but he sidestepped questions about whether the figure was set in stone. And then he said this, you gotta love quotes like this: "We're in good faith negotiations. We'll continue in good faith negotiations." Whatever they are not in good faith. Just such a trigger word, good faith at this point. But anyway, what we do know, because the thing about Manchin and Sinema, one of the differences is Manchin has been more specific about what he wants and what he doesn't want. He says, for instance, we're not taking the Hyde Amendment off. Hyde's going to be on. It has to be. That's dead on arrival if it's gone. And if you're not familiar with this, if you're new or outside of American politics, under the Hyde Amendment, Medicaid and other federal programs are prohibited from covering abortion expenses. Government spending bills have included the stipulation since 1976. And even President Biden backed the Hyde Amendment for literally decades, but under pressure from progressives during the last presidential campaign, he did reverse that, and his own personal budget did not include Hyde language. But Manchin literally calls himself pro-life, and so he expects that to still be in there. But Bernie's not a real Democrat.
It's like the Hyde Amendment is one of the most toxic constitutional problems that people don't think is a toxic constitutional problem. It's basically saying like, I don't think that my tax money that is voted on in Congress essentially should go to stuff I don't want it to go to. Now, yes, you can look at like, it was passed by Congress, so it would supersede those kinds of things, and there are religious undertones because religious people oppose abortion. But like something that, as of now, anyways, is enshrined in federal judicial history and precedent and decided law, is that like it's not killing a viable life ahead of time. Like, could I get the Hyde Amendment for something that I, as someone who believes in Greek mythology as my religion, why not arbitrarily say that? Like, I think you shouldn't be mean to, like, I don't know, hawks because hawks are my god. Like, I don't like, there's these weird religious, like weasel ways that things get in there, but it's like abortion is legal up until the point where Roe versus Wade says it's not. And that's like a viability issue. But the Hyde Amendment, it's just, it's weird, it's ancient, it's placatey to a certain group of people. But worse than that, all it does is counter like civil and human rights, basically.
Yeah, and that's who Manchin is. Thankfully, many Democrats have changed on that to some extent, but others have not. And we do have more Manchin. But before we get to the Manchin though, I do want to let you know about one little thing. This is sort of breaking news just as we're going live. According to Jonathan Allen, Senator Kyrsten Sinema left DC earlier today. Two sources tell NBC News. She's just gone. So one source supposedly, I haven't seen this confirmed, says that she has a doctor's appointment. Okay, sort of important business going on, and I'm fairly certain there are doctors in DC, but in any event, she doesn't care. Like she did this, was it a month ago, 2 months ago? Just like left while these important negotiations were going on. She doesn't care about any of this. Like, and we will be talking more about Kyrsten Sinema later on the show, but yeah, she just doesn't, she feels no obligation whatsoever to actually solve problems for constituents. That is just not a consideration. It's not a consideration for far too many politicians, but for her, it ain't on the top 100 list of her priorities. So
no, well,
she's gone.
She had a pre-existing schedule because the new semester of her wine internship that she gets paid $1,100 for is starting back up again. And so she's got to crush grapes and
yeah,
you know,
as well as hopes. That's good.
There you go.
She's multitasking.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.